All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuleyome's May Nature and You lecture. I'm Geoff Benn, Tuleyome's Education Associate. If you don't know, Tuleyome is a small conservation nonprofit based in Woodland, California. Our mission is to engage in advocacy and active stewardship with diverse communities to conserve, enhance, restore, and enjoy the lands in the region. The region that we focus on is the Northern Intercoast Range and neighboring areas of the Central Valley. We focus on the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, which we led the effort to establish and expand. In addition to our public land advocacy work, we also do a variety of education programs, including K-12 field trips, natural history, and policy articles in our newsletter, and of course, this monthly lecture series. We also run a range of adventures programs, including hikes, trail building days, wildflower tours, and our youth boot bank, which provides free hiking boots to kids. If you'd like to learn more about these or any of our other projects, you can do so at tuleyome.org. So on to tonight's lecture. So Tuleyome is supported by donations from folks like you. If you haven't already done so, we would greatly appreciate a donation of $10 or more to help support all of the good work that we do. And so tonight, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently than our typical Nature New lecture. So tonight we are celebrating the grand opening of the Woodland Regional Park Preserve. And we have a great panel of speakers who will talk about how the preserve was created, ongoing programs, and what makes it such a special place. So tonight's speakers include Chris Alford from Yolo Habitat Conservancy, myself, Stephanie Burgos from the City of Woodland, and Glen Holstein from Tuleyome's Board of Directors. And I'll introduce them again as their turn to speak comes up. And so during the talk, please hold on to any questions you might have until the end, and we'll have some time at the end of the talk for Q&A. So if you're not familiar with the preserve, it actually just opened this past Saturday, May 17th. Very exciting. It's located on the east side of Woodland, California, along Road 102. And it's actually on the site of a decommissioned landfill that was actually slated to be commercially developed in the late 2000s. Fortunately for all of us, though, work done in 2009 by Ellen Dean, Glen Holstein, and Tuleyome, along with others, documented that the site is home to a range of rare plants and soils, including a federally listed endangered species, which led to the site being protected. At the same time, Tuleyome and Conway Preservation Group have been exploring potential sites for a science, nature, and culture center for outdoor education. There was and still is a significant need for places for the public to access nature and for groups to do outdoor education activities. Tuleyome, the City of Woodland, Conway Preservation Group, and others eventually came together and shifted focus for that center to the current site of the preserve. Since then, it's been just an incredible collaborative effort between Tuleyome, the City of Woodland, and many other local groups who you'll hear about tonight, along with other volunteers to bring the preserve to fruition. And so our next speaker is going to be, there we go. Stephanie Burgos, who is the program manager for business engagement and marketing for the City of Woodland. Stephanie has been the City of Woodland lead for the Preserve Project for a number of years now, and she is going to be going into a little bit more detail about the efforts that led to the creation of the preserve, and we'll also talk about what visitors to the preserve can expect now that it's open. All right, Stephanie.
Thank you, Geoff. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here tonight, and then also happy to be with our different project partners, Glen, Chris, and obviously Geoff. We've been working together for a number of years, so it's really wonderful to kind of come full circle now that the park is open. Geoff gave a really nice overview of the history of the park, so I'll kind of glaze past some of that, but This is a photo of this weekend's grand opening. We had an incredible turnout. I hope that some of you were able to join us. And if you didn't, no worries, because now the park is fully open, so you can visit it whenever you'd like. Then we even have Glen there front and center in the photo. So you can go to the next slide. I wanted to start off by acknowledging all of our project partners and also our leadership team that has been active since 2019 and meeting with the city on a monthly basis, advising the city on a variety of different conservation topics, education, etc. So we have an incredible list of project partners here. Yolo Habitat Conservancy and Tuleyome are obviously some of our top contributors here, and we wouldn't be able to have the park open this past weekend without the efforts of everyone on this screen and more that are even not listed here. So it's a really incredible initiative, and also that photo just really underscores how many people have been involved for decades now. The next slide. I did want to point out that despite the park being closed up until this past weekend, thanks to some significant funding that we've received through the state and other funding sources, there have been hundreds of school kids that have been able to go out to the site, led by Tuleyome and Explore It. Geoff has led some wonderful groups out there over the years since 2019. We've also had docents trained. And in addition to these efforts, a variety of different conservation volunteer efforts have taken place too, like weeding, nest box monitoring for birds, construction of nest boxes, and general advisement to the city. So we're really thankful to that. And this has also really been helpful just to get an understanding of how public access works at the park. And then we've been able to tweak things along the way in preparation for this past weekend. Go to the next slide. To get you oriented here, the Woodland Regional Park Preserve sits just slightly east of Spring Lake development and around several different nature-based lands. So it's on a 160-acre property, which is owned by the city of Woodland, and the easement holder is the Yolo Habitat Conservancy. The site has multiple biological goals and objectives that are applicable to the conservation values of this easement that I'm sure that Chris will get into, so I'm not going to dive into that now. And this is all wrapped into a countywide habitat conservation plan that we're really happy to be part of and gain the expertise from our different county partners. So we go to the next slide. This is our master plan. Hopefully you can zoom in on this on your end as well. So the city, as I mentioned, is the landowner for the whole site, but we do co-manage the site with Yolo Habitat Conservancy. You'll see in the northern portion, we have a municipal well site development envelope. I don't know if you can hover over that. There you go. So the city manages that portion there. And also if you go south a little bit, then we have the park facilities development envelope, which includes the parking area. So we have the permanent parking area, the temporary parking area, the entire 1,600-foot ADA walking trail. And then we also have the pond itself, which is managed by the city, and the entry road. And then the canal that is just south of this entry road that is actually there for, I believe it's a 150-year storm. So can help out our Spring Lake community there. And again, the park just has multiple uses in that way. So the city is in charge of managing, maintaining the infrastructure to the site. As I said, the parking area, trail, site perimeter fencing, making sure that all of that is safe and sound for everyone. Geoff also mentioned that it's a retired landfill, which is indeed correct. So you'll see these wonderful hills that you can kind of see topographically here. There's 5 landfill mounds, also the highest point of Woodland, which is kind of cool. And these 5 landfill mounds here are monitored by the city. And then we have quarterly inspections by Yolo Environmental Health. So in terms of the past uses, Geoff touched on this already. I also wanted to pop in a couple extra fun facts that if you hover over the permanent parking area, so kind of in between the time that the city purchased the land, used it as a dump between the 1930s and then capped it into the late 1980s, there was a variety of different thought processes of what we were going to do with the land. So portions of the site were developed for recreational uses, including having the Air Modelers Club come out. So they actually created this runway for their model airplanes that they were able to land on there. And this is now actually a double use, as it's now our parking area. So a pretty cool double use of this concrete. And the southwestern corner was also a site for an old rodeo ring. So we actually had horses out on the site. And then years later, probably about, I think it was in like 2021-ish timeframe, we were finally able to remove all of the fencing used, the barbed wire used during that time frame, and restore it to its natural space. So in any case, it's again all an effort to return it back to what it originally was. I do also want to underscore the importance of the power of the people at work. And so organizations like Yolo Habitat Conservancy, Tuleyome, individuals like Glen, Holstein, Jennifer Hogan, Lars Anderson, and more were instrumental in making sure that the site indeed returned to how it was and enhanced and protected in perpetuity with a conservation easement. And so we're very thankful for that. And then moving forward from there, in about the 2010s, there was a big push now with the city on board to move fully forward in this optic of creating a nature space. There was a big push to seek grant funding, which we were awarded several large grants during that time. So we did receive approval from the Conservancy with funding as well from the Wildlife Conservation Board to turn this borrow pit, literally meaning that we borrowed the soil from the pond or from the southern area of the landfill mounds. We're able to take that area and then create a constructed wetland. So what this did was make the wetland have a double use. So we would have 10 acres to the western portion that would remain fully flooded year round. And then the 10 acres to the east would only be filled up in the cooler winter months. This ushers in just a much wider variety of resident and migratory birds, as well as shorebird habitat that's very useful in Yolo County. It's kind of sparse. So we also had at that time, there's over $500,000 that was granted by the state to construct the 1,600-foot ADA trail that we can now all enjoy. There's also at the very entrance of the site, an informational kiosk. There's directional fencing that really just shows you where to stay on path. ADA parking stalls as well at the entrance for easy access. Lastly, we most recently installed an upgraded irrigation network all the way around the western and northern part of the site for future plantings that were just completed this past January. So you can go to the next slide now. This is an aerial how standing like in relation to the ADA trail. So once again, in the cooler months, everything is filled up. And then once it starts getting warmer, we let the seasonal wetland dry up. You can go to the next slide. This is a cute photo of some shorebirds that I can't get over this photo. I think it's just adorable. So we have a lot of fun out at the park that we'd like to support. You can go to the next one. So now that the park is open, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Just wanted to run through some of the guidelines, hours, and rules that we have at the park for everyone's safety. So park hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. effective as of this past weekend. It's open 7 days a week, weekends as well. It's going to be open most holidays, including Memorial Day, this upcoming Monday. As of right now, the only two exceptions that we have to this are Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. We might add in New Year's Day in the future, but for the most part, you can just plan on having the park open year-round. In addition to this, we have installed security cameras for your safety, the safety of all, that shine kind of in the most critical parts of the park, that give our PD, Public Works and Parks, a really nice bird's eye view of what's going on there. And then the whole concept is that our park staff opens and closes the gate in the night. In the nighttime, they'll do a sweep to make sure that no one's still on the site. And then also just double checking with the security cameras to see if we have any cars or humans out there that are still walking around. Get the next one. In terms of access, we do have, as I mentioned, with the help of the Air Modelers Club in the past, we do have a parking area that is delineated with post and cable fencing. So you can go ahead and park your car or motorcycle in that area and then make your way to the ADA path. We do encourage the community to come in with bikes, rollerblades, other micro-mobility devices. We do have a restriction, though, of once you actually get to the kiosk area, that we ask you to please dismount and then park your bikes at the bike parking area. This is really just part of the conservation values. Also just reframing this park not as a traditional recreational park, but more of as a preserve. And so then we really want to make sure that when you're on the ADA trail, it's a calm trail. And therefore we are asking that we do not have any of these micro-mobility devices there. You do see that there is a ADA porta potty, hand washing station, and also an informational kiosk with some fun facts about the park there. You go to the next site. Here's just a snapshot of the ADA trail. Because we do have over 20 different native plant species on site, we do ask that you please stay on trail. You can enjoy the benches. We have 10 different donor benches that were contributed by private donors, and is a really nice place to relax and just take in the sights. In terms of another designated public access zone, just a few days ago, we completed the construction of the Rotary Pavilion. This was over a $235,000 project that the Yolo County Rotaries fundraised for, and it turned out beautifully. It brings you right up to the water's edge, gives you the illusion that you're almost in the water. So definitely bring your binoculars and enjoy your time there. And it's pretty near the entrance of the park, so very easy to get to. A big question that we've had is if dogs are allowed on the site. Again, because of the conservation values of the site, in terms of even noise pollution that we have there with dogs, we're asking for everyone to leave their dogs at home or take it to a variety of different woodland parks that we have out in town. This site, we're again trying to really focus on the aspect that it is a preserve. So even if your dog is on leash, we do ask that you take it to a different park and not bring it to the preserve. The only exception here is, of course, ADA service animals on leash. Another question that we've had is if fishing is allowed, and the answer for this one as well is no, but it's for actually a fun fact, cool initiative that Chris from the Conservancy has facilitated through California Department of Fish and Wildlife Services. There's a translocation of Sacramento perch into this pond. I believe it was in late 2023. And because of this, we're really trying to foster this growing population. And so anything like fishing, wading, swimming, kayaking, any type of recreational activities in the pond would cause a disturbance. And Sacramento perch is actually the only native sunfish to California. So it's a really cool fact that we're able to have that on the site. In addition, this is also not the place to release your red-eared sliders or any other reptiles, birds, etc. Once again, for the concept that we're trying to foster the native species on site, and then hopefully not introduce invasive species. So we ask that you please don't do that either. So upcoming events and activities, one that we just launched this past weekend is a wildlife photography contest. We've already had multiple people show me some incredible photos that they've taken at the regional park, and so over the years. And so then the idea came to me to just do a photography contest. We have a youth and adult contest. This will be running through June 13th. The winners will be recognized at City Council meeting, on the city's webpage, social media, and displayed also at the kiosk. So this is more of a fun initiative. Please go out, take photos, email them to myself and my colleague Spencer. We just ask that you take them from the ADA path, so no off trailing, please. And then just specify whether you are an adult or youth in the category, and then we'll announce the winners shortly thereafter. The library is putting on 2 astronomy events in June and July that are both family friendly. So we do invite you to come out. I believe it's around dusk time, 6 to 8. We've already had a couple other astronomy events there. This is done in collaboration with Explore as well. So please feel free to come and bring your families to that. Go to the next slide. I'm just wrapping up here. If you're interested in having more of a lasting impact on the regional park and getting involved more on a routine basis, we have 2 initiatives, one from the Yolo Bird Alliance that I mentioned a little bit earlier, that they do yearly nest box monitoring from the months of March to August. They've really collected an incredible amount of data since 2021. And then come out on a very routine basis. They've installed nest box out there, but then also just the data is really incredible. And then I saw this past weekend with during the grand opening, they have a very extensive list of all of the bird sightings out on the park preserve. So they're a really fun group to get involved with, and very open and willing to share their skill set too. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that a lot of the data that's collected is eggs, hatchlings. They can also teach how to do wingspan measurement, etc. So once again, a very lively, fun group to hang out with, to learn from, and then also to bring your own findings too. This is another really big one that we have. So we have year-round weeding efforts. We have a pretty good dedicated group of volunteers, many of which are from CNPS, Sac Valley chapter. Maybe some of you on the call have even participated in weeding efforts, but we have anything from deadheading to pulling straight from the root. You can use this as a solo activity, kind of like find out what the objective is for the day, if it's star thistle, if it's stinkwort, etc. And then kind of go off and, do your own thing, or you can make it a social activity. The group of volunteers, I've gone out several times, is really fun. You can go to the next slide and just see different areas of the park. This is kind of one of the main ways to get the off-trailing experience as well, because we have volunteers that are able to guide you through the areas, and then you can see different parts of the park as well, which is really fun. You can go to the last slide, and then you can see that here, sometimes once the weeds have gone to seed, it's really important to get them off the site. We can't just leave them there. And so our volunteers are really instrumental with actually hauling them into these large containers. And then we work with waste management to haul them off site. So in any case, there are a couple avenues for you to get involved and then get a little bit off trail there safely, and then also with fun groups of volunteers. So really looking forward to having as many of you out into the park in the near future, either visiting on the ADA trail or getting a little bit more in depth with the initiatives that we have there. And that's my last slide, I believe. Oh, yep, there we go. Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Stephanie.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. So our next speaker is going to be Dr. Glen Holstein. Glen has been a volunteer board member at Tuleyome since 2005 and has been involved in the Woodland Regional Park Preserve project really since its inception. And tonight he's going to be discussing what makes the preserve special from an ecological and botanical perspective.
Oh, Woodland, California is a very special place, especially in the eastern part of Woodland where the regional park and preserve occurs, because it's at the almost the lowest point in the Central Valley. Well, 70 million years ago, what's now the Central Valley used to be part of the Pacific Ocean. And then 5 million years ago, to the west, that was all uplifted in to create the Coast Range. And because the Coast Range is uplifted Pacific Ocean, it is full of salt. So the streams like Cache Creek that come out of that Coast Range, when they get down to the very bottom of the Central Valley, which is where East Woodland is, Woodland Regional Park and Preserve, the salt comes out of the water and you get some unusual, very salty soils that are only in the very bottom of the Central Valley. And let's see the next slide. So we have two different kinds of habitat. On the left side, we have native prairie, which is representative of the original landscape before there was any kind of disturbance there. And then to the right is the riparian area around the pond. Now the riparian area can be created anywhere where there's water. So that's a new kind of habitat, but very rich in wildlife. Whereas the prairie to the left is representative of those very unusual salty soils, which not only have rare plants in them, but they were also, because they were salty, have a few places like Woodland Regional Park and Preserve that were not actually plowed up like so much of the Central Valley. Next slide. So we have these prairie areas. We have two kinds of habitat: upland prairie, which are the white flowers in the foreground, and then a little bit of yellow there further on, vernal pools, because there's in different levels. The vernal pools pond water, the upland areas do not pond water. And just that difference in habitat can create very different kinds of plant life. Next. But the most significant plant we have is the federally endangered palmate birdspeak, which was on the verge of extinction until it was found in by the Yolo Habitat Conservancy, and this enabled it to be protected at Woodland Regional Park and Preserve. And since it's been protected there, it's actually doubled in population. So it went from the verge of extinction to a healthy population that's actually increasing in size. Next slide. And this is a plant that actually gets help from a root friend, saltgrass. And saltgrass is a plant more familiar to many of you for growing along the salt marshes of San Francisco Bay. But because the area here in the lowest part of the Central Valley is so salty, we have it here as well as a native plant. And it helps the palmate birdspeak stay alive. They're partners in this very rare habitat. Another rare plant that we have here is alkali milk vetch, another one that is associated with these salty soils, very rare. It only occurs in the very low southern part of the Sacramento Valley, between about Sacramento and the Bay Area, in vernal pools and areas where salt accumulates. A beautiful, very rare plant species. Next. Another rare plant we have here is the San Joaquin extraplex, which is another extremely rare species, very much adapted to salty soils. You notice it doesn't have showy flowers like the last two, because it's a plant that depends on wind to move its pollen around. It's once again, very rare, only limited to that salty area in the bottom of the Central Valley. Next. But you can see from a distance these vernal pools. They have a different color because they have different plants. These are areas where, because the landscape's a little lower, water accumulates after rains. And because water accumulates there, you have a spatial group of plants that can germinate underwater. And then when the pool dries up, they put out their colorful flowers to be very quickly pollinated in a brief moment of time by bees and other pollinators before it gets too hot and the flowers then start to wilt. Next. And some of these are vernal pools can be recognized because they have other plants with a distinctive color. This is popcorn flower, another plant associated with the vernal pools. And we have popcorn flowers that are also in the upland prairies. This particular one is confined to vernal pools, a beautiful plant, vernal pool popcorn flower. Next. One of the most characteristic vernal pool plants is woolly marbles, and it's the one that grows in the very lowest parts of the vernal pool, the last place for the water to dry up. And once again, this is like the extraplex a little bit in that it doesn't put out showy flowers for pollination. It probably pollinates itself in this case, but it does thrive in the vernal pools. And you can see a little bit of the popcorn flower in a little higher level in the vernal pool in the upper right. Okay, next. Well, one of the most beautiful of all is the Harlequin downingia. And it's a spatial kind of downingia. We have downingias in vernal pools throughout California. It's a specialized group of vernal pool plants. But this Harlequin downingia is specific to the salty soil vernal pools that are on the west side of the Central Valley. Other species that are different and obviously different looking are in the many vernal pools that are not salty at the foothills of the Sierras and the very eastern edge of the Central Valley at the base of the Sierra Nevada. Different species, those are not salty. These vernal pools are salty, so they have this very spatial and beautiful downingia, Harlequin downingia. Next. One of the most characteristic groups of plants that has species both adapted to vernal pools and other species adapted to upland non-vernal pool areas are the California goldfields. And several different species, they tend to look alike. In some cases, you actually have to dissect them under a microscope to tell them apart, but they can be very abundant. I've actually been able to identify this plant flying down to Southern California from 30,000 feet because it forms huge masses of native flowers with a really distinctive color. And when you get a lot of them, you can see them from many miles away. Thanks. Next. One of the plants that as you get away from the vernal pools up into the upland prairies where water doesn't pond is bull clover. And we have a tremendous number of native clovers, mostly adapted to prairie habitats. And prairies are very important because we know that many of the prairies have disappeared, and they're very important to a lot of our native birds, like meadowlarks and hornlarks. And as prairies disappear, these birds have become much scarcer. Next. And another very characteristic plant is Castanea affinis, another characteristic plant of the upland prairies that are above the area where water ponds. And another beautiful plant. And you might notice from the structure, it's related to paintbrush, which is bright red. This one is much less conspicuous, but in its own way, just as beautiful and a very characteristic plant of these upland prairies that indicate that the native plants are flourishing in the prairies of both the vernal pools and the uplands of Woodland Regional Park and Preserve. Next. Well, this has become such a wonderful place for the people in Woodland that they come out in great numbers to help it develop, and as a place for kids and families, a place to appreciate nature. These are some of the many volunteers that have helped this Woodland Regional Park and Preserve be such a wonderful place, loved by the people of the region. These are volunteers from one of the Woodland Rotary Clubs that have been so critical towards making Woodland Regional Park and Preserve a great part of nature, recreation, and appreciation of the families of not just Woodland, but the whole area around Yolo County. A great contribution created by Tuleyome, the city of Woodland, the Rotaries of Woodland, and many, many volunteers. So it's very great, and we really appreciate the great job that Stephanie did to bring us together to make all this happen. Thank you very much, Stephanie. And Chris, I believe, is going to be on next, and she can tell you more.
All right, thank you, Glenn. So our next speaker is Chris Alford. Chris is the Interim Executive Director of Yolo Habitat Conservancy, which, as Stephanie mentioned, holds the conservation easements at the preserve. She's also a member of the Preserve Leadership Committee, and tonight she'll be discussing some ongoing conservation projects and priorities at the preserve.
Great. Thank you so much, Geoff. And thanks, folks, for having me here. As others have mentioned, I'm Chris Alford, the Yolo Habitat Conservancy. The Yolo Habitat Conservancy, I think both Glenn and Stephanie had mentioned there's a countywide conservation plan. It's the full name of it is a bit of a mouthful. It's the Yolo Habitat Conservation Plan, Natural Communities Conservation Plan, or Yolo HCP and CCP. And the Yolo Habitat Conservancy is the organization that's responsible for implementing the conservation measures associated with that plan countywide. So at the end of our 50-year planning term, one of the main goals is to acquire conservation easements and protect over 33,000 acres of land in Yolo County. And the Woodland Regional Park Preserve was one of the first sites that we really started working on. If Geoff, if you want to advance to the next slide. As others had mentioned, Glen Holstein, who is our person who just presented, as well as Ellen Dean and others, really led the charge in the initiative and recognizing the importance of this particular property and the rare species that it contains. The Yolo Habitat Conservancy, I believe, gotten their start in this process either in around 2010 or 2011, or at least that's the earliest documentation I can find of it. It was a little bit before my time in my involvement in this process. But just to give you a sense of the importance of this site, it is the only property in the county that is explicitly identified in the Yolo HCP and CCP as a property that we must protect, specifically because of the palmate bracted birdsbeak population that's on this site. And it's due to folks like Glenn and Ellen being able to kind of bring that to the forefront and let everyone know that it's important. So this is an aerial photo with an overlay just to make it a little easier to see where the different plant communities and kind of habitat types are on the property. Hopefully you're pretty oriented now after seeing the photos that Stephanie provided. The conservation easement area is over the entire property, but we do have the development envelopes, which are kind of shown in the little cross-hashy red up where the well is, and then also along where the stormwater drainage is, the road, and then the kind of what we call the park facilities development envelope. So it's the area where the parking is, and then also the location of where we assume the future education center is going to be. Outside of that, Glenn just showed you some amazing photos of some of the rare plant species that are on the site. A lot of those are occurring in the vernal pool areas or the alkali prairie areas, which show up on this map as being the kind of pinkish areas for the vernal pools, and then the orange and kind of darker orange brown for the alkali prairie. Other portions of the site are obviously the wetlands, which is kind of the focal point for most of the public access area. And then we also have the grasslands. So next slide. And then I'm just going to run through some of the things that are being done actively on this property for conservation purposes. Not all of these activities are led by the Yolo Habitat. There's speakers. There's a wide group of folks that have all contributed and collaborated on this effort. But I'll speak to some of the ones that I've been involved with, either in partnership with other groups or specific to the Yolo Habitat Conservancy. So as I just mentioned before, palmate bracted birdsbeak, which is the plant in the circle in the middle, is one of the key reasons why we put a conservation easement on the site, is to protect that population. It was the last known unprotected population of palmate bracted birdsbeak, and so now it is protected. As I said, we started our conversations with the city of Woodland in terms of trying to protect the property in around 2010 or 2011. And through a long series of kind of ongoing conversations over time, we finally were able to place the site under a conservation easement with by purchasing the easement from the city in 2023. So it was primarily to protect that population of palmate bracted birdsbeak, but we also saw the habitat value in the rest of the site as well, the wetlands, the riparian areas, grasslands for Swainson's hawk, white-tailed kite, and potentially burrowing owl, which I'll talk about a little bit more later in my talk. And just overall, the opportunity to be able to protect some pretty important intact habitat, and having the ability to do so close to an area where there's a lot of housing development, and the site is now finally open for public access. It's just a really unique opportunity to be able to have that connection and be able to educate people about the importance of the landscape. So in terms of things we're doing for conservation in the alkali prairie area, we're trying to protect the palmate bracted birdsbeak population. Some of the key things we're doing there is just addressing the fact that there are a lot of invasive species on the site, and that compete with palmate bracted birdsbeak and the other native plants. So one of the main ones in the alkali prairie is the perennial pepperweed. We've been doing a control program over the last 3 years, trying to reduce the population of pepperweed in the surrounding area, kind of in the southeast corner of the site, so kind of south of the wetlands, everything that's kind of in that orange and darker orange area. And then also focusing on doing hand removal of pepperweed, or hand defoliation of pepperweed in the areas where there's the palmate bracted birdsbeak. In addition to that, we are doing a monitoring program, which is why we know that the population has been improving over time. Every year we go out and survey the palmate bracted birdsbeak to see how the population is doing. And so there's a picture of Terry Berry up in the upper corner. She's one of our super volunteers for the site. Others, some folks may know her from the UC Davis Herbarium. She's also one of our expert plant folks that comes out and assists us on this property. Next slide. The wetland area, folks already spoke quite a bit about the wetland area, and Stephanie had mentioned the perch. That's one thing I'm kind of excited about this. It's not something that's necessarily a goal or objective of the Yolo Habitat Conservancy, but it seemed like a really amazing opportunity where the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has been looking statewide for places where they can locate Sacramento perch, which used to be really widespread in the Sacramento Valley region. But the majority of their habitat has either been lost over time due to changes in the landscape, or the habitats that are still there have invasive species such as largemouth bass and other predatory species that outcompete them. And so having this particular site have a wetland that's somewhat isolated from other water bodies and is relatively newly constructed, so it doesn't have other fish species other than mosquito fish in it right now. It was a really unique opportunity to be able to put Sacramento perch in the site. And so the picture of the fish there is actually the year after the perch were originally translocated. The site Department of Fish and Wildlife did an electro fishing survey to see if they survived, and some of them did. They've also translated an additional population just a few weeks ago to try and improve the genetic diversity. So it's an interesting example of how we're trying to adapt these actually human-made landscapes that are actually providing some pretty unique resources for native habitat in the state. And the idea is if this site is very successful, it could be a site for then taking some of the fish from this population and being able to reintroduce them to other areas across the state. Other things that we're trying to focus on is looking at strategies for minimizing the introduction of non-native species. Bullfrog is one of the concerns for this site. There are bullfrogs out on the property. We're trying to start to implement a bullfrog control program. And then another element that Stephanie had mentioned is that we also, now that the park is open to the public, we want to start increasing on kind of our education and put some signage up about why it's important not to release unwanted pets or intentionally stock this wetland with other fish species. Next slide. Outside the wetland areas, the riparian area. This riparian area, some of it is naturally occurring from when the Barrow pit was just collecting stormwater, but a lot of it has been kind of enhanced over time by the efforts of a lot of different groups. And so the Yolo Habitat Conservancy hasn't been specifically involved in much of the riparian restoration in this area and the planting, but we have been doing some of the monitoring and assisting with providing advice on plant types that are appropriate for the location, advising on invasive species management, and then we're also monitoring the site for raptor species. So right now, this year, there are 2 different raptor nests that are active around the wetlands. One is in the for a red-tailed kite nest, and then the other one is a Swainson's hawk nest. They're both currently active right now. So that's pretty exciting. Next slide. And then lastly, as far as open space areas, we have the grassland area. A lot of the grassland area is where the former landfill used to be. As mentioned before, that area was capped, and then from the time that it was capped till now, it has been sitting for decades, kind of in an unmanaged state. And so for those that are familiar with plants, if you go out to the site, you will definitely see lots of invasive plants. There are some pretty big stands of perennial pepperweed, yellow star thistle. We also have smaller populations that we're really focusing on addressing of pretty aggressive non-native species, such as Russian knapweed, and then also white top and stinkwort. And so we have kind of a super crew of volunteers. Jennifer Hogan is the leader of that, and they have been aggressively attacking the stinkwort. The Yolo Habitat Conservancy had contracted the Yolo Resource Conservation District to try and control the white top and some of the knapweed. And then also we're kind of at this point trying to selectively manage for the pepperweed and star thistle in some of the areas where it has kind of the highest potential for increased habitat value, with the idea that we would expand that throughout the site over time. In addition to plant management, one of the things we're trying to really actively do on this property is improve the grasslands portion of the site for burrowing owl. We have been working, the Yolo Habitat Conservancy partnered with a Boy Scout troop 2 years ago to install 8 artificial burrowing nest sites, and then also have worked with the Burrowing Owl Preservation Society, with them assisting with the Boy Scouts with their project, and then also installing some shelter sites as well. So the first year we had those burrows installed, we had some burrowing owl activity within a couple weeks of that installation. And then this year we've had 3 burrowing owl sure if they're still there on the site. So we haven't quite convinced them to move into our burrowing owl condo complex yet, but they have been checking it out. So we're excited about that. And then I think that's the last slide. And so the last thing I just wanted to mention is that of those different land and habitat areas, we're going to be continuing to try to improve and expand on our invasive species management. And then as we progress with that, trying to replace some of those areas that were previously covered with invasive species with native species. So one thing that I'm really excited to introduce and work on once we get a little bit further along on this site is looking at how we can increase pollinator habitat in our grasslands areas. So introducing both native grasses as well as native forbs in the area. We also want to expand on our burrowing owl enhancement, and then are working on kind of coming up with an approach for doing some experimental management in the palmate bracted bird's beak area in the alkali prairie to see if some of our management strategies can help increase the population more than it already has by looking at what of the co-host species are actually present in that site. So with that, I know we're pretty short on time, so I will turn it back over to Geoff. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And so I will wrap things up here with the discussion of education and adventures programs out at the preserve. And so again, I'm with Tuleyome. And so Tuleyome's work on the regional park preserve concept goes back almost 20 years when we were working with local community members to find a site for indoor-outdoor educational facilities. We've worked with City of Woodland, Conway Preservation Group, local Rotaries, and other conservation groups, as well as members of the Leadership Council to find and develop this preserve. And it's really been an amazing collaboration. And so Tuleyome has been providing adventure and education programs at the preserve site for almost 10 years now. And our programming spans everything from K through 12, school field trips to family outings. And so in addition to those K-12 field trips, we do community science programs, astronomy nights, vernal pool tours, docent training as well as some adventures programs. We're able to deliver these programs thanks to support from City of Woodland, California State Parks, Joseph and Vera Long Foundation, Heller Foundation, Kelly Foundation, Conway Preservation Group, as well as other generous supporters. And so I'll just give you a few highlights of things we've been up to out at the park. So I spend a lot of my time running our K-12 field trip program at the preserve. And so our program features different trail options that teachers can choose from. Each trail is basically a theme. And so teachers can choose from adaptations, ecosystems, evolution, land, sun, water, or weather. Depending on the grade level, different options are available. And then each one will include a nature walk with binoculars and then 3 to 5 activities that are related to that theme and are aligned with state science standards. So this photo is from a field trip I did a couple of weeks ago with some kindergartners from the Woodland Science and Tech Academy. And so here they're building a sun shelter that they've designed as part of the Sun Trail. Here's a photo from a 3rd grade class from Southport Elementary in West Sacramento doing our adaptations trail. So they're sitting down here along the ADA trail to preserve. They're looking at some cards that have pictures of the beaks and feet of different bird species, and they're matching those up to potential food sources. And so thinking about how those structures are adapted to the food sources the birds use. And so our reach has been expanding. And so this is the regional park preserve. And so we're really trying to serve schools from across our region. And so this year we've had groups from Davis and Thomas, West Sacramento, Winters, Woodland, and also Vacaville. I forgot to add to the list there. And so our program is growing. And so this year, I've had just over 800 kids out at the preserve, plus another 300 out at Conaway Ranch next door. So getting lots of kids out and experiencing nature. This is a photo of some second graders from Birch Lane Elementary. Doing one of the favorite activities I've developed for the program, which is a mock fossil excavation, where students dig up cards with photos of real fossils from the Central Valley, and then they get to see how the plants and animals in the area have changed over the last several 100 million years, which is fun. Another program that Tuleyome does is Nature's Theater. So this is run by our volunteer board member, Lindsay Dawkins. So Nature's Theater trains volunteers. Sometimes these are adults, sometimes they're high school students. And these volunteers work with Lindsay to put on eco plays for younger kids to get them engaged with the environment and thinking about how humans can interact with and help out the environment. So these are pictures of a couple of recent productions of the play Superbird at our Spring Thing event in March, and then at the grand opening on Saturday. So this is just super cute. And so the premise of the play here is that Superbird has forgotten how to be a bird. And so the kids along the walk learn different aspects about birds. So here they are building a nest and learning how to sit in it. They learn different bird calls, different ways of flying, and then at the end of the walk, they relay everything they've learned about birds to Superbird to teach him how to be a bird again. It's really cute, and the kids enjoy it quite a bit. We also have our youth boot bank program. So if you go out to the park, you'll see our 1967 Divco milk truck, which was the original home of the youth boot bank program. And so the Youth Boot Bank provides free 6-month loans of hiking boots to kids in the community. So it's a way to reduce the financial barrier for families who want to get their kids out hiking and enjoying nature. And so whenever Tuleyome does an event out at the preserve, we always bring boots with us and provide loans. We also have monthly office hours at our office in downtown Woodland for folks to pick up or drop off boots. As part of the community science program, we've been doing a series of iNaturalist bio blitzes at the preserve over the last year. So iNaturalist is a online database where anyone can upload photos of organisms they've seen out in nature, plants, birds, insects, fungi. And those photos are tagged, so we know where those organisms were seen. And then that can be a resource for scientists who are trying to understand where particular species might occur or how those species are changing over time. So we did a BioBlitz in spring, summer, fall, and winter last year. Got a good number of observations. And I got a little video clip showing you what was found during the winter 2025 BioBlitz. And so one of the cool things about iNaturalist is that you don't need to be an expert to use it. So it has an AI that can help you with identifications, and then community members can also provide suggestions about identifications for anything that you're not sure about. Now, PowerPoint is freezing on me. While that's thinking about it, I can tell you about a few other things that we do at the preserve. So we also host astronomy nights. We last did one in December with Barry Rice, who is also on the leadership committee. And so that was a lot of fun. We had a group of Tiger Scouts that came out and were able to get their night sky merit badges, and participants were also able to see the moons of Jupiter, which is the first time I had seen those. So I thought that was pretty cool. We also do vernal pool tours, and we have some recordings of those on our YouTube channel, which are a good thing to check out if you want to see some more of those beautiful flowers Glenn was talking about. Briefly, we started a horticultural internship program at the preserve this past year. This pairs college students with some of our expert longtime volunteers at the park. And so one of our interns is Julian Ricker, a senior from UC Davis. She was paired with mentor Jennifer Hogan, and she was working on invasive plant management at the preserve. Our second intern this year was Lazia Nala, Jr. at UC Davis, and she was paired with Lars Anderson, and her project was looking at saltgrass propagation and comparing how that works on native soils from the preserve site versus commercially available potting soils. Every year, Tuleyome does our big Spring Thing event at the preserve. This is a great opportunity to come and enjoy activities for both kids and adults. We do tours focusing on different themes, such as birds, wetland ecology. We put on several of those nature theater plays I mentioned, and also have live music and food, and it's just a lot of fun. And so I'd encourage you to save the date. Spring Thing 2026 will be on March 21st. Lastly, as several folks have mentioned, we are planning for a Science, Nature, and Culture Center on the site. Tuleyome holds a 30-year lease on the portion next to the parking lot area to the east. And so this will be a center for formal and informal education activities for both kids and adults, community gatherings, and cultural events. And so planning and fundraising is ongoing for that project. If you want any additional information, you can check out our website. I particularly encourage you to take a look at our events page for upcoming events. And then we also have a library page, just kind of an archive of all of our content. You can find links to our virtual vernal pool tours there, links to videos from game cameras we've had up at the site, so some very cute videos of coyote puppies. And then also a link to a 2021 Nature and You lecture from Lars Anderson on the development of the preserve, in which he goes into quite a bit more detail than we're able to tonight about the kind of nuts and bolts of how the various aspects of the preserve were constructed. Okay, and so that's it for my piece. Thank you for bearing with us. We have just a couple of minutes for any questions you might have. You can either type those into the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask. Thank you for coming out. And I encourage you to check out our upcoming Nature and You lectures.